vessels have said it looks like there might be trilobites down there. I don't know, it doesn't matter. The fact is, there's no such thing as an index fossil. But all of geology is built around these index fossils being in a particular order. So if you find a rock containing a trilobite on top of a mountain, it got there by an overthrust or something. They will figure out some way to explain how this 500-million-year-old rock is on top. Anything except the obvious, that maybe the fossils don't mean anything. But all of the geologic column is based on index fossils. Dinosaur blood found in bone. Medical pathologists examined dinosaur bone under a microscope and found dinosaur blood inside the bone. Earth Magazine, June 97. Now, how can blood survive for 70 million years? 18-million-year-old magnolia leaves from Idaho shale were still green when the rock was cracked open. Campbell is a far cry from a creationist. Fossil bees, 25 million years old, contain ancient germinating bacteria in their abdomens. I don't think so, folks. Those are not millions of years old. These petrified trees that are found standing straight up all over the world, they're called polystrata fossils, indicate the layers did not form slowly over millions of years. The layers formed rapidly before the trees could rot. I have seen scores of these things. Petrified trees running through multiple rock layers. Those rock layers are not different ages. Sometimes the petrified trees are upside down, running through rock layers. I think the best explanation of this type of thing is a worldwide flood in the days of Noah, just like the Bible says, where you would get the earth covered with water. The earth is still spinning under the moon. The moon doesn't know there's a flood going on. So the moon is still pulling up on the water, causing the tides. But now you have a unique problem in a worldwide flood, because if the earth was totally covered by water, there would be no continents to stop the tides. I live in Florida. The tides wash up on the beach and they wash back down. But if there were no continents to stop them, the tides would become harmonic. They reinforce each other after a while. And laboratory tests have indicated if the earth were covered by water, the tides would be 200-foot tidal change every 6 hours and 25 minutes. Well, I was up at the Bay of Fundy a few months ago and watched the tide come in 100 feet. And the erosion is incredible along the edge of that place. Go to the Bay of Fundy in Canada and you'll see what I mean. I mean, that tide comes roaring in there. They put rubber rafts out there, and you pay $10 to get in the raft, and you go surfing in front of the tide. You surf up the river about 30 miles. Well, time, okay. The erosion from the moon, from the tides during the worldwide flood, would cause thousands and thousands of feet of sedimentation. That's why we have fossil layers. That's why we have layers containing zillions of dead things. It formed in a flood. The earth is speaking to us as loud as it can. If there was a flood, the judgment of God, not millions of years of evolution. Thank you.
My first question for Kent Hovind is, you describe a flood 4,400 years ago, and evolution of varieties from a single kind. With the degree of change that you imply in less than 1,000 years or so, why do you not consider yourself to be an evolutionist? Because whether you realize this or not, you're accepting a rate of change since the alleged flood that any real evolutionary biologist would find absurd.
The rate of change that Christians, that creationists say happens is within the limits of the biblical kind. Charles Darwin, in 1859, sailed around the world and ended up, one of the places they stopped was the Galapagos Islands. Here on those islands, he saw 14 varieties of finches. He decided, after studying them carefully, by the way, he hated birds because he liked worms, and he thought it was kind of cruel for birds to eat worms, so he shot every bird he could find. And he collected all sorts of these birds, and Charles Darwin said, I think all these birds had a common ancestor. I bet you're right, Charlie. It was a bird. And then Charlie said later in his book, on page 170, in his book, Origin of Species, Charlie said, it is a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants, throughout all time and space, should be related to each other. So the birds and the bananas are related, according to Darwin. And I'm sure Dr. Bartelt feels the same way, if you go back far enough in time. Now here's the problem. What Charlie observed is what we sometimes call microevolution. Now I object to that term. We should call it variation, because it's not evolution at all. I wouldn't include that word evolution with it. It's a variety. Dogs produce a variety of dogs. No argument. Everybody agrees with that. Maybe even the wolf, the coyote, and the dog had a common ancestor. No argument. That's a variation. It's a variety. Roses produce a variety of roses. See, this is what we call a fact. This is observable science. But what happens is, you get dogs, big dogs, and little dogs, but they're still a dog. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. Nobody's ever seen a dog come from a non-dog. And a 3-year-old can tell the difference between a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. Which one is not like the others, boys and girls? Well, duh. It's still the same kind of animal, okay? So the problem is, the Bible says they bring forth after their kind, not after their species. And Darwin got all bent out of shape about species, origin of species. See, what the evolutionist wants you kids to do, they want to show you thousands of examples of microevolution, which is a fact, and then try to make you take a giant leap of faith and logic into believing that somehow that proves the dog and the wolf came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago. Well, look, macroevolution is religious. And when I say evolution is a religion, I'm referring to macroevolution. Now, here's the problem. When you say the word evolution, Dr. Bartelt is thinking of thousands of examples of microevolution, and she doesn't understand how I can't see it. But I am thinking of macroevolution, and I don't understand how she can see it. So we're really speaking different languages here. It's because of the definition of the word evolution. It has two unrelated meanings. So when I say the word evolution, I am not referring to microevolution. That is just a variation. It's still the same kind. And the varieties have limits. Farmers have been trying for years to get bigger and bigger pigs, but they'll never get a pig as big as Texas. There are limits to these variations. That's a fantasy.
Okay. In one of Hovind's website areas, he says that creationists say that variations have taken place since the flood, and he says the Eohippus is nothing more than the hyrax running around South America today. So Hovind is apparently saying that this type of change is consistent with microevolution, and that it took place in the last 1,000 or so years. Next slide, please. However, the fossil record shows evidence of this much change in about 4 million years, and this is supposedly macroevolution, because creationists call apes and human beings different kinds. I wonder who is really the evolutionist here. I don't see a lot of difference.